You know, it's really interesting. So far our first one dropped, and I got a bunch of texts, and everybody's asking like, "Well, how'd you guys come up with this?" And why are you doing this? And honestly, it's taken so much hard work to get to where we are as surgeons that honestly, this is an outlet for me. I mean, this is my favorite part of my week. I get to see Cuff Daddy. I mean, this beautiful smiling face. So check us out on YouTube on our channel. But part of it is this drive that I think we each push each other to do more. When I see Cuff Daddy post stuff, I look at what he does. I'm like, I'm not jealous. I'm not envious. I'm intrigued. I want to see how he did it. I want to see why he did it. I want to talk to him. And that's kind of what today's topic is like, why are we so driven? Why is it so hard to get to where we want, but yet we have no off switch and we want to keep going? And so we're going to talk about that. And we're going to bring a buddy of mine on, Jimmy Howard, played 15 seasons in the NHL for the Detroit Red Wings. Fantastic goalie, great friend. So I'm excited to have him on in a little bit. But I mean, Cuff Day, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's cool, man. I mean, like I said, we're obviously really driven. We're orthopedic surgeons, the big O, right? That's what everybody says. I love when people meet me and they talk to me and then we're fucking around and making people laugh. We're laughing together. And then they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, nonchalant. And they're like, you're a fucking doctor? And I'm like, yeah, like what does a doctor look like? Like, why didn't you think that I was a doctor? Like, is it because I'm normal? Is it because like we're hanging out? Like, I don't get it, right? So, but for me, like, yeah, we're all really driven and we're kind of grinding it out. And I don't really have an off switch per se, but I do have like I go hard when I have fun, right? So this is part of this. Like we're having fun together, we're hanging out, and we're just shooting the shit. But yeah, I guess I don't have an off switch. We're always like go go go, like be the best at this, be the best at that, be the best med student, and I still am like that on a day-to-day basis, right? Like with surgeries too. I mean, aren't you?
Oh, totally. Like even today, I mean, in the OR, it's that mask that I wear is different than the mask I'm wearing now. And it goes back to our first episode. So if you haven't listened to our first episode, go back and listen to that because we talk about our alter egos and how we got there and why I'm the American Pharaoh, why he's the Cuff Daddy. I mean, no, it's Danny Acevedo and it's Sharif Bichet. However, this is our fun face, and we have to have that because I think there's so much stress that goes into what we do, how we got here, all the work it took. But there's also the other side of now that you're here and there's still the stress, there's still the anxiety of making sure that you're doing the best for your patients, that you're dealing with, insurance carriers, you're dealing with so many different things. But you gotta have the ability to just let some steam off, whether it be with again a good glass of bourbon, a good buddy, maybe both. But there is no off switch. I just don't think either of us are built with an off switch, and I think that's not unique for people who have reached our what we do as surgeons. I mean, I know my story. My story is I didn't get into medical school the first time, but again, if you go back to the first episode with Kamran, he was saying he had one option to be a doctor. Well, I'm Egyptian, so our options were, to be an attorney, to be a doctor, and if all else fails, be an engineer and possibly be a businessman.
Those
But
are
the
those
reality,
are pretty fucking good options, dude.
I know, but you're pretty much told you're going to be one of those, and if you fall out of that, and I'll tell you a quick story of my cousin. He is like, I'm not doing any of those. And he actually got into this is like early 2000s. He says, I'm going to get into this thing called like the interwebs. I'm like, what? The what's www even? I can't even spell that. And he's like, I'm going to come up with a website that essentially looks at any team ever, and it's going to be called What If Sports. And it's going to be like, what if the 69 Yankees played the 84 Tigers? And you'll have all these algorithms that will spit something out. This is the early 2000s. And everybody, all the Egyptian parents are like, this will never work. Your son, should have been a doctor, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward when he sold it to Fox Sports for millions. And now he's like on his third startup IT thing. I have no idea what he does. However, he kills it. And I would do anything to switch places with him on most days. However, I love when I leave the OR and I have that feeling that I just made somebody better. And so that's why I do that. So I don't know. To me, it's like you gotta work hard, and when I didn't get into medical school, what did I have to do? I had to put my face back in my books and make sure that I grinded again to make sure that this dream was going to be real. And I think in that year and a half that I was out, I realized it was my dream to be a doctor, not my parents' dream, and I think that's why it worked out for me.
Living the dream.
Trying, man.
I mean, mine was I guess it was the same thing, right? So my dad's first gen Latino, so he was just happy to be a doctor, period. He's an ER doctor. So when I told him I wanted to be a doctor, he was like, "For real, mijo?" And I was like, "Yeah." So then, I went to college, and dude, I all I knew was that I had to fuck shit up. So I studied my ass off. And for people who knew me in college, it was the same thing that it is kind of now, right? Like I'd be like so hardcore in the books, and then I was also in a fraternity, and I was a Kappa Sigma at UC Irvine. So then all my fraternity brothers, when I would hang out with them and we hang out, they wouldn't even know that I wanted to be a doctor. And then when I dropped the pre-med card, they're like, "What? Like, but how are you going to be a doctor?" I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, I'm really smart." So then I ended up getting into med school, right? And then they were like, "Oh shit, he is smart." And I was like, "Yeah, I told you that I was smart." So, and when I was in med school, my dad was like, "Well, you're gonna have to like, kick ass if you want to do orthopedics because it's like really competitive." So I just buckled down, dude, and I just grinded and hustled, and I studied like 10 hours a day. And anybody who is listening to this that knows me knows that that was me. So, it's just like go, go, go. And then like I'd spend time with my family afterward, and I was really regimented. Same thing in residency, same thing in fellowship. All I knew is how to hustle. And then like for now that I'm in practice, I maintain that hustle, right? Like even though I'm done, like patients are coming to me to get a badass shoulder surgery, right? So I dedicate myself to that, right? Like the night before, everyone's always like, don't go out and don't party too hard the night before, but if it must be known, and I tell them like I don't go out the night before, like I actually go to sleep at 9. I don't drink the day before surgery, I don't do anything like that, I don't go out, and I make sure that I'm like tip top in the morning, and just so that I can knock it out in the daytime, right? And just give a badass performance for the patient, and do a good job for the nurse and everything. So it's kind of built in for me to hustle. And I think that's why, everyone's like, "Oh, how do you have time to do this podcast with Sharif?" I'm like, "Well, how do I not have time?" I mean, this is chill for me. Like this is me just hanging out with Sharif. Like this is kind of like you said, like our off switch, right? But I still get to be my alter ego Cuff Daddy, which is kind of cool. So I like that even more. In college, they called me the Vado. It was like I had a the in front of my name. Instead of Acevedo, they said, "Oh, he's the Vado."
So should you be the Cuff Daddy?
I mean,
Would that make it better?
that's what I am on TikTok.
Oh, okay. Well, there we have it. So find him on TikTok. The Cuff